Hey folks, how's it going? Can you hear me well? Does it sound okay? Please let me know if you can hear me well. Just type in yes or no. I mean, if you can't hear me, I guess you're not going to type no. But if you can hear me well, type in yes into the chat, please, as a comment. Just type in yes. Okay, does that mean you can't hear me? I have to test this with my other phone. Am I audible on my YouTube live? Let's see. Test. Test. I'm absolutely audible, which is good. Okay. So I'm doing this live to talk about an important topic that is interesting, or should be interesting to anyone who's engaged in a spiritual practice. Now, a spiritual practice could even mean that you're a religious person, you just, let's say you're Catholic or something like that, and you go to church and you pray to the saints, or say you're Holy Mary or whatever. That is still a form of magic. The Catholic religion, if practiced, if practiced correctly, is a magical system, just like any other religion. Because when we're looking at it from a perspective of a metaphysicist, occultist, we see the technique, we see the technology behind it all, right? And is technology the right word? I believe so. And in this case, I would use the definition of technology that is a conscious expression of the faith, which leads to changes in reality. Okay, and if it's done correctly, the actions assisted by technology are going to cause the changes in physical reality, right? But this is not the topic of today. What I want to talk about today is how astrological cycles change the manifestation, and how certain astrological cycles make certain manifestations possible in the first place and prevent others from happening. Okay, so what does that look like? Imagine the whole of existence as one ocean. Yeah, it's an ocean of energy, and the manifested physical world is just temporarily coagulated mass. Okay, it's a temporarily condensed object that to our 3D perception could even have a very, very long lifespan, but in the grand scheme of things, they're very temporary and they're constantly coming and going. Okay, so it's actually one huge field of energy. And what we're doing when we're manifesting things is we bring things out of a more subtle realm in which they all exist outside of space and time, meaning they exist simultaneously. So all forms, all potential, all ideas, they all exist as a raw potential. And we can bring them into this physical world by attuning our consciousness to them, right? Now, once something comes over, bridges the gap between this world of potential And the physical world, it is now subject to laws that govern the physical world. And I'm not just talking about gravity and all these things that we would find in Newtonian physics. I'm talking about there are uh, kind of like cycles. There are cycles in this spiritual universe, or in this energy field. Okay, there are cycles that are indicated by different astrological uh, constellations, and based on what those constellations are, it is easier for some forms to sort of move over, or to condense themselves into the physical world, and harder for others. Okay, so using the metaphor of a season during summer, it's very, very hard for water to coagulate or condense itself into ice or snow, right? During different times, different seasons, different energetic conditions or temperature conditions, it is easier for the snow to manifest itself. Now, maybe that's not the best example I could come up with, but you get the idea. There are different energetic qualities that make certain manifestations easier and others harder. Or you could even say the energetic condition makes certain manifestations possible in the first place and others impossible. There are cycles. This universe is designed very, very beautifully by the prime creator or whatever. Right? We're here to study the laws of it and use them to our advantage. That's really what we're doing here. That's what occultism is. This is what metaphysics are. So our consciousness can interact with those more subtle worlds through ritual, through the technology of magic. We can tap into those more subtle forms and bring them here. And that could be something temporary, like an evocation, in which we bring the spirit here and tell them what we want, how we want it to change physical reality in alignment with its office, of course. And this is also something that you really need to keep in mind. A lot of people try to get spirits to do what they just can't do. In the grimoire, you will have listed what the spirit is capable of, what's in his office. And you should only tell the spirits to do those things that are in his office, you know? Now, this doesn't mean that they're super limited. I mean, you can pretty much do whatever the fuck it is that you want if you have the right spirit for it. But if you don't, you have a problem. And when you use spirits, you have less limitations than the ones that you have when you use your own consciousness to channel these thought forms into this world. It's much harder to cause physical changes with your own mind and your own energy and all that stuff versus using the technology of magic and use spirits to do so. Very important to keep in mind. Now, this explains a whole host of things. Many, many, many more things can be explained by that than just what spirits cannot manifest, and when's the right time to do this ritual and that ritual, and what incense do I use? Can I use a Saturnian incense to work with those Venusian spirits during a Mercurian hour? Of course not. That's complete chaos, and it's not gonna work. You need to wait for, ideally, the day of Venus, the hour of Venus, and you use a Venusian influence. Sometimes you can also just use any day, but a Venusian hour during that day and a Venusian influence, and you will get the result. You have to understand how things work, man. The recipe needs to be in alignment with, the atmosphere. You can't just do things whenever it is that you want. There are rules to the game, right? And we want rules. Otherwise, it's complete chaos and we can't use it anymore. So rules are good, but you have to work in alignment with the rules, and this is how you get the results. Now, this explains many, many, many things. Now, it's election season in the US. arguably the most, the presidential election in the US is arguably the most important election in the world. Why? Because for various reasons, America is still the most influential country in the world. Still, not going to be that for too long in the future, but for now, based on the global reserve currency and the military and other things, that's a very important election. Now, one of the things that you will observe during this election season, and from using the perspective of an occultist or metaphysicist that looks at the world from a multidimensional perspective, what you see taking place right now is the battle of the old versus the new. Okay, this atmosphere that we're stepping into is a new one, and this new energetic atmosphere, just like I described, makes it possible for new egregores to come in or new spirits to manifest, or makes it possible for them in the first place, and it makes it pretty much impossible for the old ones to maintain themselves. We're stepping out of after 2020. 2020 was essentially the beginning of a new epoch, energetically speaking, but there's always a transition phase, and that transition phase we're stepping out of. It was between 2020 and 2025, so we're right on the verge of stepping into the phase of acceleration of this new epoch. So the old spirit is gone. We're in a new phase of human development and evolution. And this is an evolution of consciousness. The old systems, the old spirits, the old egregores can no longer maintain themselves. They will dissipate, because this has very little to do with let's say, people come up with a lot of explanation of why that is. They talk about morals, or moral decay is the reason for that, or the Illuminati, or Zionism, or whatever. People come up with a lot of reasons, or conspiracies for why things happen that way, the way they happen. But at the end of the day, it's all the result of certain energetic dynamics. The old systems that you and I were born into and grew up in can no longer maintain themselves, because they're no longer in alignment with the energetic atmosphere that we're all experiencing on this planet. So this means that new thought forms, new egregores, new systems, and new ways of living are now manifesting themselves already, and the old ones will die. They can't maintain themselves. Please understand that all organization, all group thought, all sort of like control systems and organizations of groups of people are egregores, and therefore they're subject to the influence of these energetic environments. It's best if you look at the world in terms of energy fields, and energy fields can only maintain themselves in the atmosphere that is conducive to them. If the atmosphere changes, they just dissipate, and with that, as a result of that, the physical structure of whatever societies, governments, whatever, changes. So what we're seeing right now is the last fight of the old against the new. That's it. And the old will lose. Now, this is not necessarily represented as Trump versus Harris. It's more like people that want to go back into the past versus people that want to move into the future. And obviously, the people that want to go back into the past, or they have to lose, because it's no longer their time. It's no longer their time. We have no choice as humanity but to move forward, and this will look very different than what most people believe. We're at the very beginning of a new stage of human evolution, of which, of course, AI is going to be part of that. Of course, many, many other things are going to be part of that. But The bottom line is that this will require a growth in consciousness. And this will be the death of all religions, of all monotheistic organized religions. It has to be, because Christianity and all of these others, they're just they're egregores, essentially. They will no longer be able to maintain themselves. I know that people are trying to promote a culture war, this and that and the other. Now, to an extent, that is the case. However, we will, during the next decade, see such a transformation of human consciousness, assisted by technology, and a merger between the spirit world and the physical world, that you will no longer be able to recognize the species. This concept of money, as we know it right now, is going to be valid right around until right up to 2050. After that, it's going to lose its meaning, really, based on new technologies that are going to transform the way matter is even defined. And on top of that, of course, AGI will make value production. It will push the costs of the production of any type of value towards zero, which means it loses its value, and it's available in unlimited quantities. Now, it's up to you to decide what that's going to do to an economic system such as capitalism, right? Now, at that point, value is going to be defined as something completely different, and maybe on different calls, I'm going to go into more detail of what that actually means. But the number one thing that you have to understand is that we're moving into a time now, into decades. And I know it probably doesn't seem like that for you right now, because the old system is dying. And to you right now, and to the majority, the overwhelming majority of people right now, it's about survival, material survival, because they're operating from a paradigm and a level of consciousness that is still rooted in this old system. And I sympathize, absolutely, I sympathize, because I understand what it's like to be in there, but understand that this is a transition phase. Okay. In the next decade, the very, very close future, we're going to see a split between people that are going to essentially be caught up in a let's say virtual reality, even though it's not a very advanced form of it yet. But they're gonna be plugged into essentially a virtual reality of pleasure, provided pleasure. That could be porn, that could be all kinds of work. I mean, to an extent, most people do that in their free time already. They're using technology to basically stimulate themselves and to be plugged into virtual realities. Even if that's just a political podcast that just validates the preconceived notions of what is right and what is wrong, right? I mean, they all have their various channels, either like on the right or left or whatever. Any political direction has its own forums and podcasts and all that stuff, right? And that, yeah, is entertainment, even though to the person it seems that it's like kind of like I'm doing something important. I'm getting mad about politics, right? I'm getting mad about transgenders. I'm doing something important. At least the person feels that they're doing something important, right? So on top of that, of course, there's entertainment, there's porn, there's all of these things that people plug themselves into. And this is going to intensify because there will be more and more elaborate ways of for the people to distract themselves. On top of it, I believe that, or that's a very big opportunity for governments to impose things like CBDCs as a consequence of that. But what I'm talking about is essentially universal basic income. This is going to be a serious discussion right around the 2030s. It's going to go a little bit downhill economically, and if you promise people a regular paycheck without working for it, universal basic income, that's going to be a very, very tempting idea. for a lot of people, because at that point you will survive, and on top of that you have all this entertainment with its costs moving towards zero once again because it's all virtual. And this is the very, very near time future that we're looking at. And this is going to be around 70 to 80% of the population. And then there are others that are going to use all those technological advancements to augment their creativity and their abilities to create, you know, and they're going to push things forward that are quite incredible. You know. Now, what does it have to do with spirituality? Because, see, what we're actually looking at in the coming decades and even during the next century is a merger of the worlds. The mental realm and the physical realm are going to merge. We're going to have a complete merger in a sense of having technologies that will allow you to transfer thought into certain materials that will manifest your ideas here instantaneously. It's going to be like the great son of 3D printing. This technology is going to be available right around the late 2040s. And at that point, when you can transfer thought into matter, essentially, and vice versa, or you can transfer one form of matter into another form of matter, scarcity becomes meaningless. So this is going to be the end of the economic system as we know it, because there will be no more scarcity. There will still be value, but it's going to be different. And this will require a completely different understanding of consciousness. And up until at that point, a lot of research has to happen in the field of transpersonal psychology, which basically means training people or providing the training tools for people to train their consciousness to the point where they can control it, so that they can tap into the collective unconscious and bring any thought form up and transfer it into physical matter. Essentially what magicians have been doing for thousands of years, right? And before this period of darkness that we're just coming out of, and when I say darkness, I'm talking about something like a Kali Yuga, spiritual darkness. We've had civilizations that already had access to technologies like that. How do you think the pyramids were created? With the tools that we have today, we could not reproduce the Great Pyramid or something like that. It's absolutely impossible. However, if you get the right technologies, consciousness-assisted technologies, that can transfer thought into matter instantaneously, things like that are possible, the Great Pyramid, and much, much more, of course. And we've had civilizations like that in the past on this planet. You know, the monuments are right there. The monuments are right there. This stuff existed. And it will exist again, and not in the too far distant future. We're right on the verge of moving into that. I know it doesn't look like that if you look at the political landscape today, but people are just desperate because they don't understand what's actually going on. Depends on the perspective that you have. It depends on the information and the knowledge, of course, that you have. Do you have, I have, or like, do you have access to sources that can give you that type of information? And those are spiritual sources. Those are not necessarily people or documents or whatever. Those are, sort of like guides, spirits that can already that kind of like have a guidance role, if that makes sense. You see, so it's of course it's going to be a challenging time, but certain times allow for certain manifestations and others don't. And we're just coming out of an energy phase in which certain developments were not possible. It was an age of spiritual ignorance, spiritual darkness. And now we're moving into a time in which we're going to be able to do what they used to do in ancient Egypt and other phases of the species, more advanced civilizations. And this time The sky is going to not be the limit; it's going to be the floor, so to speak. It's going to be quite an interesting time. Now, uh, in the context of a lifetime of a normal human lifetime, this is, maybe I don't know how old you are, depending where you are, but this is only going to speed up, and within the next 10 years, you're going to see developments that have not taken place within the last 100 years. Uh, like I said, the new way of living is going to solidify, like where we transfer thought directly into matter and vice versa, is going to manifest itself right around 2050 completely. The technology is going to be already around. Is going to be already there around the 2040s. And listen, this is not a long time, man. This is like 15 years, a little bit longer than that. 20 years for sure. Okay. Within 20 years, we're going to have this technology. A breakthrough of its. This is going to be literally a new level in our evolutionary stages. And hard to believe, I know. You don't have to believe me. And you probably ask yourself what I'm talking about here, but mark my word, just watch it manifest and take place. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is essentially, I guess the message that I'm trying to convey here is that don't try to revive the past. It might be tempting, you know, because it simplifies things. Ideas from the past are maybe tempting because life was simple back then, or you think it was simple back then, even though you have just an idea about it. It's not that you actually lived in the 1950s or 1900s or 1800s, I mean, the manosphere, for example, is filled with a lot of people like that. They just want to bring back, um, you know, the old ways or whatever the fuck whatever that's supposed to mean. Like, well, what are you talking about? Get women back into the kitchen, or trad wives and all that bullshit. What's that even mean? You know, talk that people are like are really concerned about. Um, they talk about Gen Z not willing to work, right? Oh, Gen Z, they're just not working. They don't want to work anymore. They don't want to work their 9 to 5s. At the same time, they're complaining about AI taking over all the jobs and doing all the work anymore. You know, no more jobs. All the work's going to be done by AI. And on the other hand, a whole generation of people that don't want to work anymore. You know, people are just complaining, not understanding that both of these things have something to do with each other and actually supposed to happen at the same time. Nothing happens by accident, you see. But people love to complain, and I understand, because it seems that the past was so much simpler. The past wasn't simple. I guarantee if you went back to the 1950s, you would find a world so steeped in ignorance, you wouldn't last very long. Listen, this is an era that was so ignorant. The average person was a fucking goddamn moron, even worse than today. People in the 1950s, on average, didn't know shit compared to the average person today. Literally, literal retards. All right. I was not planning on cussing on this. The point is, don't try to go into the past. We're required to open ourselves up to the future. If you wanna survive, if you wanna thrive, you better open yourself up. You cannot resist the flow of the universe. You can't resist the Tao. So be open to the future. Be open to the movements that are going to manifest themselves regardless of what you want. Whether you want it or not, that's where the world is going. And you should accept it. Don't deny the future. Resistance is futile, my friend. Good. So this is all I wanted to say here. I'm not sure if you guys can comment. Maybe not. Maybe I did. I don't think I changed the setup of my live stream, but for some reason, I received a message where somebody told me they can't type. I don't know why that would be the case. I did not change any setup of the live stream. Well, maybe people really can't type here. I don't know. Interesting to interesting. And let me try to type something. See if that's true. I want to comment. How do I make a comment here? Well, I guess people can't comment right now. That's fine. Okay. So hopefully you got something out of this. It's just I've been working all day, um, essentially preparing and creating the future. And I just thought I wanted to share this. Hopefully it's food for thought, and you can gain some value from it. That being said, the future is infinite, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.